Okay, good morning, Year 10. I would like to talk you through your work for this current fortnight, which is about Typhoon Haiyan. And incidentally, I'm going to do a few more of these, hopefully to hopefully improve understanding a little bit and get you all on track. So basically, the work I'd like you to do this fortnight is about Typhoon Haiyan. If you remember last time you did work on hurricanes or tropical storms, which was last fortnight, it was Hurricane Sandy in the USA. That was your case study of a tropical storm in a developed country. This is your case study of a tropical storm in a developing country. An example needs you to study one of each. So what you can see on the screen is your assignment. I have attached 3 files for you. I've given you the presentation about Typhoon Haiyan, which I'll show you in a second. I've also given you a separate bit of information, lots of facts and figures about the typhoon, and I've also given you the case study sheet, which you're going to need to fill in and submit as evidence of your work. So let's look at that now. So this is your case study sheet. So you can see all your tasks are listed here. This is what I'm expecting in from all of you, either on paper, I might have sent it to you in the post, or you've got a copy on Google Classroom. So the first task was to watch some YouTube clips, as you can see there. So if I just click on that link, which I've opened previously, it's here. All I've done is link a search on YouTube to as your first task. And what I want you to do first, basically, is have a look through some of these YouTube clips to get an impression of how serious a storm this was. And it was an incredibly intense super typhoon, one of the strongest ever recorded. And just dip into and out of these YouTube clips to see to get a taste of what it was like during the storm. And that's your first task. So I'm not expecting you to hand anything in on that first task. It's just to improve your understanding. Go back to the sheet. Your second task is basically to talk about the track of Typhoon Haiyan. And if I switch now to the presentation I've given you, one of the slides there, slide 3, gives you a good representation of where it tracked. And in that box there, what I'd like you to do is you could either sketch it or you could describe it. I don't mind how you do it. Sketch it if you're going to hand it on paper, or you could download it, send it to me, it's up to you. But essentially, you can see there the track of the hurricane started off in the Western Pacific around Palau, that's the island over here, and then tracked in a west-northwesterly direction from the 3rd of November to the 11th, so about a week. And around the 8th of November, it became a Category 5, the strongest of all of the tropical storms, and went right over the central part of the Philippines before making landfall across the South China Sea, making landfall in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia and northern Thailand as well. So that's your second task, is to talk about the track of Typhoon Haiyan. And I'm expecting in here you to put in names of places, dates, and maybe strengths of the hurricane. Also, in with that same task, I would like you to put in some background information. So, which part of the world we're talking about, again, dates, time, strengths, and if you can find out figures about, it's like a summary box. How many people were killed, how many were injured, how long did it last, that sort of thing goes into the background information box. Your task 3, which is probably the one that's going to take you the most time, is this one here, about what were the effects of Typhoon Haiyan. So the primary and secondary effects, but also what were the immediate and longer term responses. And I'll go through a few photos to give you a bit of a flavour of that in a second. But essentially, primary effects, same as when looking at earthquakes and volcanoes and other climate things, the primary effects are ones that happen straight away at the start or immediately after the typhoon strikes. So what did it do straight away? The secondary impacts or secondary effects are things that happen to people and to the environment and to the economy, etc. in the longer term. So it might be days, weeks, or even months later. And then when you talk about responses, the immediate responses are what did people and governments, what did they do before, during, and immediately after the typhoon? How did they respond to it? What did they do about it? And the long-term responses is what did they do in the longer term, obviously in terms of like weeks, months, maybe even years later. So let's try and give you a bit of context. Let's try and look at those different things now. So I'm just going to switch to a different version of the presentation. I've not sent you this one, but I've just got some photos here to talk about. So I think this one is a really good example, this third one here, about the human impacts of a typhoon, of a tropical cyclone. And remember, this is a case study for a developing country. It's not for a developed country. And you can see here, look at the foreground here, this guy with an injury in his forehead. So the injury is obviously a big thing. You can see, I think most powerfully, the faces of the 2 figures in the foreground here. This is, it's really quite a sad image. There's also a lot of disruption to their family life. They might have lost a family member, they might have lost a home, they might have lost their way of making a living, and you can't know which of those it is, but you can suggest, and it's very likely that that is the case. Almost as powerful, look in the background, in the blurred background, you've got a very large number of people queuing for something. Most of them have got children, very small children in their arms, they've got suitcases, and in the background you've got a military plane waiting to evacuate them. So you can say here the big impact is evacuation, maybe uprooting from their families, their support networks, their friends, their jobs, their homes, and all the mental stress that would cause, and all the, this could be for weeks, could even be for good. So there's a lot yet there you can talk about, and the skill here is thinking about what you see, what that might mean, and why that might be, rather than looking for direct, obvious things. It's thinking about what these things suggest. Let's go back to another photo. And this is a very good, almost like an action shot. You can see here, there's like a family group washing in a pipe that looks like a pipe might have burst here. So you've got having to live out in the open, as it says here, people in the city have been living in the open. You can't really see, there's nothing for them to live in really. They're just sitting on plastic chairs, washing out of bowls. This enormous mass of debris in the middle area of the photo here. Think about what might be underneath that. There might be bodies underneath there. There might be animals underneath there. There might be broken sewers, so it's going to be an awful smell. It's going to be poisoning of the water supply. It's a fire risk. And look at the background as well. You've got these buildings that are still standing are the ones that are made of blocks or concrete, whereas the ones that collapsed are made of wood. So you can see, there's the explanation as to why some of them collapsed. Maybe a response could be that they should rebuild with stronger buildings. But there's lots of suggests going on here. And then last photo, again quite a powerful one. You can see you can just about see some figures here being obviously homeless. You can see the devastation right in the far distance, all the buildings destroyed. Just a couple barely left standing. This super typhoon, did absolutely level this city called Tacloban, which was on Leyte Island, one of the biggest islands in the Philippines. The water you'd see lying around, that's going to be a mixture of fresh water and seawater. So any water lying around on crops can poison crops. It's not drinkable. There's going to be diseases spreading in the water if things are not cleared up quickly. So again, lots to suggest there in terms of impacts. So going back to other things I've provided for you, there's an information sheet. I'm not going to read through all this, but essentially there's a wealth of information there in terms of impacts, dates, numbers, costs. Look at that one. Snakes entering damaged buildings to escape floodwaters. That's not something you read every day. So you've got mosquitoes, people contracting malaria. So your task really is, when you're looking at your case study sheet, primary and secondary effects, is sorting these impacts into what happened straight away, and maybe even before or like just after the typhoon, but also what happened later, what happened weeks and months later. And then going on to the second page here, I've crammed lots of facts and figures and some aid information there, other clippings from news organisations and the Red Cross is this last set of bullet points. And you need to sift through that and also put them into immediate responses. What did people do about it straight away? What did people do about it in the longer term? And let's just exemplify that. So here you go, recovery plan mounting £250 million will run over the next 3 years. So that's obviously going to be a long-term response. You could put in there long-term recovery plan, which is going to improve the skills training for volunteers, and it's going to build expertise in disaster management, so that improves how well they're going to be handling these things if they happen again. Sometimes the long-term responses don't change how this typhoon affected people, but it'll make the next one affect people less. So that's really a run through of your task, and hopefully that helps a little bit. Last thing to say is just there is an extension on the next page, which is a bit of extended writing for you. Why are the impacts of tropical cyclones more severe in some places over others? Think back to your last work on Hurricane Sandy. Look at this week's work about Typhoon Haiyan, and why is one more severe than the other? And I'm expecting maybe sort of 3 to 5 well-developed points there, examples. So why, and if you thought America suffered more than the Philippines, tell me why. If you think the Philippines suffered more than America, tell me why. 3-part explanations. Make sure you tell me, really develop your points. So that really concludes the run through. Make sure you put any messages for help, etc. on the stream of the class notes board, and good luck. Take care. See you soon.